Hello there and greetings. It's Business Life 360 After Hours. I'm your host, Kristi K, and this is the podcast where we take that deep breath and that deeper dive into the real lives, experiences, and perspectives of success-driven people. We are going to tackle real-life topics at the intersection of business and life. After the workday, when we're theoretically off the clock, that's when After Hours picks up. Because that's when the convergence of life moments and the workday truly shows up. It is, after all, After Hours. Our topic on this Business Life 360 After Hours episode is reinvention at any age. This particular episode is for any one of us at any age who's feeling the need to start fresh, to find relevance again, to get our groove back, and to feel energy and feel alive again. So our topic, reinvention, means reinventing ourselves, our careers, our lives. Our most incredible guest on this episode of Business Life 360 After Hours is the one and only Hannah Grufferman. She's an executive, a native of New York City, an award-winning author, an advocate for aging well, and, oh yes, she started running marathons at the age of 50, when she decided to reinvent the new version of herself. She's worked with AARP, and she's been a staunch advocate for positive health at any age. She's been known to say, and I've heard her say it, we can't control aging, but we can control how we do it. And her perspective is infectious, and it's grounded in incredible life experiences. So Hannah Grufferman, welcome to Business Life 360 After Hours.
Thank you so much for having me, Kristi. What a lovely introduction. Thank you for that, too.
Absolutely. And guess what? I feel like we should be clinking champagne glasses together. So here it is.
Well, you know what? Cheers to you. I'm going to take a sip from my water bottle.
Well, I'll tell you what. This is truly a celebration every time I get the opportunity to get some insight from you. So, Barbara, let's take a dive. You have had version 1.0, version 2.0, version 3.0 in your life so far. Give us an overview of what each iteration of Barbara has looked like and kind of your life in those different chapters.
Yeah, thank you. I love talking about this because I think it hopefully inspires people to make some changes in their life if they really want to make a change, and don't be afraid of making a change. I do like to say, hey, everyone, if I can do this, you can too. But I went to college, like a lot of people, and then I went to graduate school, and then I went on and got my first job working in magazine publishing. And I worked my way up, worked very hard, primarily in ad sales, and I'm a real people person, so it was really fun for me as well as a job for me. And then I started to feel a little bit bored, and this was before I got married, before I met my husband, got married and started a family. So I was already in my about 30, and I decided to look around to see what else I could do with my career. And I took a job, a very exciting job that allowed me to travel internationally and to really, what I like to say, have my brain cells percolate a little bit more, because while I was using a lot of my skill sets, I was also doing many new things and meeting many new people and working in very different areas of the world. So it really was wonderful for me, a wonderful experience. And that was an international conference company. But the whole point of this is that if I had been afraid to take chances, if I had been afraid to move from one industry, the magazine publishing industry, to another, something completely new to me, I never would have done it. I would have stayed where I was. I would have felt stuck. And that's a really important message I want everyone to hear, is don't be afraid. So then life went on. I met my husband. We got married. I had 2 beautiful daughters, and I continue to travel a great deal. In fact, the more successful this company became, the more I had to work and travel and expand. And I found that wasn't really mixing very, very well with my other role, as talk about work and life, my other role as a mother of 2 young daughters. And so I was really trying to cut back on my travel more and more. And, I did somewhat, but I didn't really leave that career until a few years down the road. I stayed with it until I went through menopause. At this point, my girls were older, but I had just gone through menopause. I was about 49 years old, and I was just feeling, oh my goodness, where did life go? What's next for me? Where do I fit in the world? What are all these media messages about once you hit 50, it's all over for you, that you're not really relevant anymore, you're not sexy anymore, you're not really desirable anymore.
Right. So so at this point in time, Barbara, you are looking at your 3.0 version. And let me ask you about the first two. Did you feel like you were intentional every time you kind of moved into those different iterations, if you will, or chapters of your life? Were you thinking, you know what, it's time, I need to go? Or did it just sort of evolve?
I would say for me, and that's a great question, for me it was very intentional. When I went into from 1.0 to 2.0 to the conference company, it was very intentional because I was starting to feel bored. I was starting to feel, I just need something more. Like, this isn't really working for me anymore. I've got these great skill sets. I've got great connections that I built up, and I should be able to use them to continue building my career. But I also felt like, I don't know, there was just something telling me that I could do even more than what I was doing. And I wanted to do more. I wanted to expand my horizons. I planned it out well.
I was going to say, I do feel like there are signs when you get to that point of thinking about transitioning to a new kind of a new chapter in your life. And yours happened to be maybe boredom, as you stated. And it's not like there's a playbook or anything, but you started kind of feeling that feeling of like, I need more. I think there's something I'm missing. And so when we're talking about that and reinventing, how does one dig in and really not be afraid to make a move when you get to that point where either you're at a fork in the road, or you're just starting to feel like, I got to go. I need to do more.
I'm so glad you used that word intentional, because I do feel that people will be most successful in making a change, especially a big change. Not just like changing companies and staying within your sector, for example, but changing sectors completely. Like I did. I think you need to plan it, and you do need to be intentional about it. I really made sure that I knew what I was getting into. I really researched the industry well. I really wanted to make sure that I would succeed, that I would be able to transfer my skill sets from one to the other. And as soon as I was comfortable enough, that's really when I decided to make the change. It was not a quick decision. It wasn't even an easy decision, but it was a decision that I ended up being very happy about ultimately. But then as I'm moving into, and still in my 2.0, enjoying it very, very much. I do love to travel. I really enjoy building a company. These are all things I love to do. But again, I was torn, as many women and men are, as parents, being on the road as much as I was, and with two little kids at home. And I, really then again wanted to be intentional about making a change, but for different reasons. In that case, it wasn't because I was feeling bored. Oh, God, anything but bored. I loved it. It was amazing. And each conference that we held and ran was unique and very different. So, my brain cells were always percolating at that point during 2.0, for sure. But again, I wanted to be more intentional about really combining my work-life roles as much and blending them as successfully as possible. Mm-hmm. I think that's the best way of putting it.
So enter 3.0. I know that is leading to something really important for our listeners to hear from you.
Yes, 3.0 might be my favorite so far. And I'm a really big believer that everyone should have a few different careers in their lifetime, if it's at all possible. Even if you've been trained to be an anesthesiologist, you might say, well, it's hard for me to not be an anesthesiologist. But there are different facets of being in the healthcare field that you can investigate. It doesn't have to be that one that you've been doing all these years. And I think that that's another important message. I like to see people expand their horizons and take their existing skill sets and bring them to a new field.
So, Barbara,
Yeah,
you're hitting on
yeah.
something that I think is really important too. I always say blend your talents with your passions for success. And like you will define your own success. But I always feel like that is such an important part of our lives as we move forward and we move on to new chapters. It's like if we can find that sweet spot between what we've learned through our lives and then those previous chapters, as you've done, and really take that and blend it with something that you are so passionate about. And with you, I know you like to educate others on what you've learned and through your life experiences. So you've really been able to do just that.
Yeah, I mean, that gives me a great deal of joy, which is why I'm so thoroughly enjoying 3.0, which started, as I was starting to say before, was shortly before turning 50, when I had just gone through menopause and, was starting to feel all these things that very often women feel as they go through menopause and hit middle age, which is, what it was, mid-age, middle age, midlife. And I just then, it was a little bit different. It was still intentional, but it was based more on confusion about where I stood now in the world and coming down to making a choice. And this was very interesting to me that it really came down to two main choices for me. I could either put that proverbial blanket over my head and stay there and do a pity party and just kind of let life take over my direction, or I could take control of that myself and just embrace everything that was happening to me. Embrace the fact that I was getting older. Embrace the fact that I was, yes, in midlife, and things were changing and continue to change, by the way. We're always changing. We're always in a state of change. Everybody should, once you realize that, everyone, the easier everything will be, because nothing stays the same.
Well, and what I love about you saying that too is that you really do, since I've known you, call a spade a spade. And you were in that moment, as you said, in 3.0, where you were calling your menopausal moments these frumpies and the lumpies and the grumpies in this period of time where you weren't liking yourself as much. And what I like about that is you took the bull by the horns and you said, okay, how can I take this, help myself, but also help others? So tell us how you were able to really take that moment in your life where you were acknowledging that aging was hitting you, but not make it be sort of like, oh my gosh, now I have to, stop everything, and that changes everything, and kind of maybe cower, but kind of turn that around and make it more like, I'm reinventing, darn it, and I'm going to be moving forward.
Yes, I mean, and that is exactly what happened to me. And I really was confronted with this just existential, challenge of who am I? What do I stand for? What do I want? This was really important to me. What do I want? What do I want to do in this world? When I look back at 1.0 and 2.0, I realized that they were great. I loved them. No regrets. Would never change anything about them. But they were really more to benefit me. Not only in terms of financially, but also ego-wise, in every way. Like, I was getting a lot out of 1.0 and 1.2.
Interesting.
Okay? And then 3.0, still, I'm getting a great deal out of 3.0, of course. I mean, really. But I turned it around. My focus turned around. It went outward. And I then said, I am not the only person going through this. This is not possible. So
right.
I turned it around, and that's when I wrote my first book. I did a lot of research, and it was more I went online and started asking this, asking that, and it was so confusing. I became even more ready to put the blanket over my head. And then I decided, you know what? And that's when I made that big decision. No, I'm going to take this, as you said, the bull by the horns, and I'm going to embrace aging I'm going to embrace everything about it. I'm going to make it positive instead of what I'm seeing out there right now about it being so negative. You want to fight it, fight it, fight it. No, I'm going to take a completely different approach. I'm going to live it, breathe it, walk it, talk it, and then I'm going to share it, what I learn and what I'm doing with other women. And that's 3.0.
I love it so much. And, I want to say along the way, before we talk about some of the specifics and the tactics and those things that you've written that are making a huge difference for so many, did you notice, as you're kind of on this 3.0 journey, did you notice that ageism came into the equation in terms of, when I say ageism, I'm talking about stereotyping, discriminating against people based on their age. Did you feel that at all with your journey and your path?
I have to say no, I personally did not. However, it was very clear to me when I started doing all my research and talking to people, talking to experts, talking to, really everyday people, that ageism is a huge issue and continues to be a huge issue. Now, my first book came out in 2010. I was a voice in the wilderness. Very few people were talking about positive aging. However, the good news, and this is very good news, is that in the ensuing 12 years up to now, more and more companies, more and more people, magazines, other media are talking about positive aging. I mean, let's look at the example of Allure magazine. A few years ago, the then editor-in-chief, Michelle Lee, banned the word anti-aging, or the term anti-aging, from its pages forever and forevermore.
And to that point, probably at the time you wrote your first book, you were thinking, okay, everything is about beautiful aging, and how do we age and stop looking like we're the certain age that we are? Did you run into a lot of that where it was all about the beauty and sort of looking a certain way as opposed to feeling healthy, feeling fit, really taking those extra strides, if you will, pun intended, to move ourselves forward from a health standpoint?
Absolutely. I like to say, and in fact, from my last book, the chapter on exercise and fitness is called All Roads Lead to Fitness, because that is absolutely true. After doing so much research, it became very clear to me that all roads do lead to exercise, to moving your body. If you want to feel good.
And you have done such a good job. Yeah. Yes, you have done an incredible job of really getting that message out to people of all ages, men and women. And to that point, you need to tell us more about these marathons you run. I need to know how you kicked into that in 3.0 and said, okay, frumpy, lumpy, grumpy, I'm done with this. I'm going to start something positive for me. Tell us about that journey.
Right. I was tired of all those umpies. I had to go, no more umpies in my life. And so I said, I got to do something. And then what I decided to do is walk. And then I added a little running. And then I started running more, walking less. And then before I knew it, my daughter kind of egged me on and said, I want to hold up a sign that says, "Go, Mom, go," for the New York City Marathon. And so a year later, about give or take, I ran my first marathon, and now I'm this year I hope to run 2 more, and they'll be number 15 and 16 marathons.
Oh my gosh! And was your daughter there with the sign that said "Go, Mom, go"?
Yeah. Oh yes, they all were. Everybody
I love that, Barbara. Congratulations on those tremendous feats.
But I really want to point out, Kristi, that I chose running because I happen to really love it. I didn't love it at first, but I learned to love it, and now I really love it. And it's something that it brings me so much joy. I also meditate as I'm running, and it just is, there's nothing bad about running for me. Now, it may not work for you or the next person, but this is something, and there's no question in my mind about this. You must move your body. Every single study I have ever read or written about or talked about indicates that so many illnesses that happen even more as we get older could be completely out of your life and you moved your body every day. Mm-hmm. And there are many ways to move your body. It doesn't have to be running. Running just happens to be very efficient.
Mm-hmm. For sure.
Your back.
So exactly. And if our listeners, let's just say our listeners are over 30, over 40, and maybe they're going through a huge life transition, or maybe they're desperately needing a fresh start, to reinvent or to begin again. How would you say that they can take an inventory and really start that process when they might be facing this like blank landscape? Where should they start?
I really think you have to look at, well, what do you want? How do you want to, I don't want to necessarily say legacy, but it kind of is. Like, how do you want to be remembered? How do you want people to view you? How do you want to convey yourself to the world? What is important to you? Really important to you? And that could be a very powerful guide to what you want to do next if you do want to do something next. And then also something else too. I really like to cut people slack. Just because, let's say, you decide you want to do something next, you're not so happy anymore, you're not so, motivated anymore with what you're currently doing. You may, if finances allow, you may not want to do another kind of work again. You may want to do no work. You may want to do volunteering. You may want to do nothing and just go fish.
And I think the other piece of this that I notice is this mindset, if you will, that, oh my gosh, I'm a late bloomer. It is just too late in my life. I've already done 1.0, 2.0. If I go to 3.0, what are people going to think? How am I going to start something? I should have done this when I was 20. We have all these should haves. How can we not tie this whole feeling of, I'll call it regret, or why didn't I, and turn it into something positive that says, oh my gosh, at least I'm doing it now. And it's not that I'm a late bloomer. It's just that was my time.
Oh, yes, this whole thing about late bloomer, that's a term I really don't like, and I think it should be banned, because being a late bloomer, like, what does that mean? Let's look at me, for example. I started running marathons at 50. What, I should have been doing them at 20? You mean that means I'm a late bloomer? No, that's when I was ready to do it.
Yes.
I wasn't ready before. I wrote my first book at 50. What? I mean, I should have done it at 40? No. Didn't have that anything to say when I was 40 about this. I had a lot to say about all of this, about positive aging and healthy aging, and taking control of your life and kicking fear out of it when I was 50. So I'm not a late bloomer. Everything I've done, getting back to your good word, intentional, everything I've done so far has been done at the right time.
Well, and I think to your point as well, reinvention, it gives you a fresh start in many ways. It allows one to be able to maybe let go of toxic people or unhealthy environments, or do a shift to something that feels more authentic. And I like what you're saying, because you really followed that, and that sort of that voice within you and that feeling that you knew you needed to do more and be more. And you started that exploratory phase, if you will. And you really started to say, okay, what is it that I need? I know I need to feel healthier. I know I need to do certain things. So you kind of set some, I'll call them sort of maybe informal objectives, but yet you were able to really launch into those as you found that walking and running really made you feel better.
Yeah, and I think that moving your body and being physically fit and as healthy as you can be, given any genetic issues that you may have, or pre-existing issues that you may have. I mean, we have to cut everybody some slack about these things, but really taking care of everything that is in your control will make you feel so much more powerful. There's no question in my mind, because I'm speaking from experience. I was not feeling powerful when, right before all of this became so clear to me. Not at all.
Now, were you always a confident person? Was confidence a thing when you were a kid in your life?
I think, yes, pretty much, but there were moments, there were times. I think I was a very typical kind of gawky teenager where I wasn't really all that confident. And then I became more confident as I got older. And then I just felt I was really not confident just before hitting 50, I have to say.
there have been chapters I know in my life, and perhaps with yours as well, where you might have been the only one that it felt like was believing in you. It's sort of like, if we don't believe in ourselves, who's going to?
And that's a very, very important message to give yourself. And it's also a very important message I like to consistently convey to my two daughters and anybody else who wants to listen. But that's something else, too. I think there's a responsibility I feel I have, and I hope everyone feels they have, in conveying to the next generation all of these important messages that, that we now have about what is power, what makes you feel powerful, what's the right direction to go in your life. How do you get unstuck? How do you move from 1.0 to another? These are all really important life lessons and skill building lessons that I hope I have been conveying and showing by example to my girls. I know certainly with my running, one of them, of the two, one of them has picked up on the running in a very, very big way. The other
I love it.
Out, but she doesn't like running.
I was going to ask you that. Okay, so to that point too, when you run, I'm just curious, do you run with a team of people? Do you run for certain causes? Tell us more about kind of that realm of you and running.
I really, during the week, I really love running my all by myself, because I really do, as I mentioned, I meditate, I problem solve. It's a wonderful opportunity for me to be by myself. It's my time. So that's for me. But then when I'm in training, deep training for a marathon, it's good to have that camaraderie with other people. So I do belong to a running team. Now, of course, during the last 2 years, all of the, races were really not happening. But I expect to be back with the running group again as we start training for the next New York City Marathon.
That's
so
awesome.
That's a weekly thing, like a weekly long run. And it's such a wonderful thing. You talk, you catch up, you talk about restaurants and movies and TV shows. And it's just, so the beautiful thing about running is that it can be solo, so it can be your special time, but it is also very social. Mm-hmm. So you have the best of both worlds.
So Barbara, what keeps you grounded?
Oh, my kids, my husband, for sure. Don't take yourself so seriously. Yeah. Okay. You were on the Today Show last week with Hoda. Yeah. Okay. But still, you have to empty the dishwasher.
I've got it. And now what do you have left to do in your life? What do you have to do in your life that you haven't done?
Oh my gosh. I go to Japan.
Okay.
I am writing another book focusing on menopause, because menopause is so misunderstood, so still swept under the rug. People do not want to talk about it. Women don't want to talk about it. Their partners don't want to talk about it or understand it or what's happening. And I really want to bring it more into the forefront and have conversations around menopause, and menopause in the workplace specifically is very important to me. And I just want to keep on hopefully motivating and inspiring people to do everything they can to age better.
I love it, Barbara. And now, to that point, we like to do a takeaway nugget so that our listeners can be left with a thought from you on reinventing themselves at any age. What would you leave our listeners with?
Well, do not be afraid to move forward. Do not. Really think through everything that you're thinking about doing. Really look at the pros and cons, but don't be afraid. Be fearless after 50 or whatever age you are. Just be fearless. Go for it.
Absolutely love it, Barbara Hannah Grufferman. And my takeaway, one of the many, is that we can write the next chapter in our lives by planting one seed right now for reinvention. And there's no such thing as a late bloomer. Do it now. So Barbara, you need to tell us about your products, your website. Tell us more about the book. Tell us more about the menopause sheet so that we know where to find you.
you can find out all about more about me and what I've been doing and the books I've written on my website, BarbaraHannahGrufferman.com. You'll also see some information about our free newsletter, which I do in partnership with one of the best doctors in the world, Dr. Margaret Noctegal. She's an endocrinologist and menopause specialist. She's the medical director of Menopause Cheat Sheet, which is our newsletter. I am starting a podcast where I'll be covering all different topics really connected to successful aging and positive aging for the most part. Really everything, finance and sex and health and you name it, we're going to be talking about it. I mentioned I'm writing a new book, and so stay tuned on that. There'll be updates on my website. And I'm on all social media, Barbara Hannah Grufferman, Facebook, Instagram, soon to be on TikTok.
Oh, I love it. I love it. Well, thank you so much, Barbara Hannah Grufferman. You amaze. Thanks for being a part of Business Life 360 After Hours.
Thank you, Kristi.
Find success by your own definition at your intersection of business and life on my next podcast, Business Life 360 After Hours. Thanks for joining us. I'm Kristi Kay.
Business Life 360 After Hours is hosted and produced by Kristi Kay. Audio engineering, production, and editing by Chris Pfeiffer. Be sure to join Kristi for her award-winning television series, Business Life 360, the third Thursday of the month on WGTE HD or at wgte.org/B360. Business Life 360 After Hours is a production of WGTE Public Media.